Vitandalo, over to you.
Hi, everyone. As you've heard, my name is Kavita. I hope everyone can hear me.
Yes, we can.
I think I'll just get right away to the presentation. Thank you for the nice introduction. That was really good. Just give me a moment to share my screen. I'm gonna, as you heard, my name is Kavita. I got into, I was born into agriculture really. Like we've been farming since I was born. But it's only recently that we decided to scale the family farm from just the usual thing where you grow maize and beans or seasonal crops just for the family to a commercial business. So Kidakani Farms was a concept I had of turning our farm from just bushland to agriculture, or rather agribusiness as we call it. And we got incorporated in November last year. It's a family enterprise, and we farm under rain-fed agriculture as well as under irrigation. We initially were pumping water from a borehole in the community, like a community water project that we did, but with time we've been able to dig our own dam that stores about 750 liters of water, and then we irrigate everything by gravity from there, and then pump everything by solar. As you've heard, we keep animals. We've kept goats for a while and caged chicken for meat and eggs for a couple of years actually. Then I think towards last year we sold out all our goats, and with time, because of just metrics and what works out, we decided to focus on pig farming, which is now what we are currently expanding into. So at the moment we have like 66 pigs, but we have a lot of reproduction because pigs give birth after every like 4 months. So, and each birth can be anything between 8 piglets to 20 piglets. So production can really increase. It's a business that has faster production, and I think it's what we prefer. We also do veggies, as you heard, which we grew. We've had a greenhouse for about 5 years that we grow tomatoes and supply. So each greenhouse would give us like 100 kgs per week. So at some point we're doing like 200 kgs of tomatoes supplying to markets in Nairobi, which is something we're gonna talk about at some point. And then we've also grown peppers like red and yellow pepper that would supply to Roy Market and also do deliveries. Recently, after we got our water system figured out, we expanded to open field tomatoes, greens, capsicums, and beans. So we're trying out different things to see what works out. We also have fruits. For the longest time, fruits take a while to grow. Like especially if you're growing like oranges, mangoes, and such things, it'll take 3 years before production, even avocado. So it's more of a long-term project. So a lot of the fruits we have on the farm are things we've grown over the ages. When we like growing things. So we have grown oranges before and mangoes and bananas, but it's only now that we've converted that business into more commercial, because you know, like sometimes visitors come, give them and that kind of thing. Now it's more for selling. So we wanted to get into watermelons for a while. We did a trial that failed, but now our current trial is really doing well, and we start harvesting this week. And we are starting a pop-up plantation, about 1,000 of them after doing our research on that. It's something like we really want to get into and expand aggressively. So the goal is to switch from just having seasonal fruits like what you have with mangoes and oranges to something you can produce weekly like bananas or purpose, so that, you know, it's really good with cash flow, and sometimes you need to arrange your stuff like that so that you don't just sell once per year and you're done. One of the principles that really work on our farm is just like having zero waste. So like everything that is extra on the farm or it's waste on one part of the farm is consumed on one side of the farm. Like for instance, our pigs will eat any leftover vegetables. Like when we prune things and stuff like that, instead of throwing them away, our pigs will do that, some of our chickens will do that, and goats too. And then whatever is waste, like their manure, will be used on the farm instead of fertilizer. So that way you have a nice ecosystem. And just to be more environment conscious, we also do like solar. Part of the reason we do solar is because there's no Kenya Power here, or rather connecting to Kenya Power is really expensive, but also solar. In Machakos, we have the sun throughout. Even on rainy season, it's still sunny during the day. So you can operate easily pumping it solar, and it's a one-time investment that saves you all that. Today, I was going to talk to you guys about marketing and my experience with that and what has worked for me as I've managed and farmed the last 2 years. And especially I'm going to share from personal experiences. And I think my biggest experience has been in production sales and flexibility, like, or rather my biggest lessons, like what I've learned in terms of marketing for agriculture is to work on your production, to work on your sales, and to be flexible. So let me get into it. When we talk about production, it's what you're selling. You need to choose what you're going to do. Choose something that you can manage, something that you can meet demand for. I'll give you an example. Last year, at some point, I was supplying Kienyeji chicken to just Kitengela, Triva, my friends in Nairobi, that kind of thing. And in about a month, when I started, I thought I had enough chicken because I had like 400 at that point. But within 2 months, I was done. So you need to choose a product that you really understand. It was good cash flow, but my marketing was good, but I lost my customers immediately I was done. And that was disappointing to them. So in case I want to do that again, they might be like, oh, you ran out again. Like, can I depend on you? So you need to choose a product that you can manage, you can meet demand for, and you can keep up with, especially if you're going to be on it long term. If you're doing short term, just choose anything. People are always eating. The other thing for you to be able to hit good market is to achieve a good quality and then scale up. What I mean by that is when it's a common phenomenon you guys have had, like chama cha juza kipaja jitembeza. When you sell someone something and they like it, they will definitely come back. Part of achieving good quality is getting feedback from your customers. I'll give you an example. There's someone who's supplying, again, the story for Kienyeji, was supplying chicken with, and they found it a bit fat. And it's because what they're used to, they're not used to Kienyeji that is well fed. So they're expecting to be like super tough. And the feedback from that meant that I could differentiate for them. So that meant like, I would only give them like the jogos instead of the hens that have laid eggs. And because of that, they were a repeat customer and I didn't lose that market. Another example I'll give you is our tomatoes. Like, from the way we raise them, they do not get bad so easily. So whenever my bloggers would come pick here, they'd always like it because of the effect they would get in terms of like they can sell it on Monday, sell it on Thursday, like they don't have to dispose it within 3 days of harvesting because you've not had excess watering, you've not had like excess fertilizer. If you take care of your things well, then the end customer you're selling to will like it and they'll refer you to other people. And then also to learn from others and the job so that you can be articulate about your product. There are people who are very keen on what breeds are you growing. Because that's one way that people avoid middlemen. They wanna find out like different things, whether you're actually the one who farmed that. So when you're doing your production, you need to be really aware of the product that you're raising, because that will get you into conversations with potential buyers, with people that might help you produce a better product. Because at the end of the day, I believe having a good product is the number one thing when you're going to market, and then being articulate about it, because that way you can present it properly and it will help you. And one of the ways to do that is visiting farms. Like when I was starting pig farming, we started around last year, May, but for 7 months before that, I was visiting a friend of mine that was doing the same thing in Lemuru. So that I learned different aspects. You know, when you visit for one day, they will teach you whatever they can teach you on that day. But when you keep going, some days you'll find challenges, some days you'll find good things. some days you'll find incidentals that will not have happened when you're there, because for farm visit, you'll only see the good stuff. But if you are there longer and you dedicate more time to it, to learn, to apprentice, that means you will get to see and have a real experience of what you're doing. And never be afraid to ask questions. I think farming is one aspect of farm that most people are willing to answer all sorts of questions, because they will tell you what's a good place to go to check out inputs and things like that. They'll give you experiences. And the reason or the advice is so that you do not hear one story, because the people will tell you, hey, nilichomeka, so I'm not going to do that again. But you'll also find other people's success stories. Take both of them seriously, not just one. Do not just take the idea of this went bad, so I'm not to get into it, or take the other side of this went good, so I'm going to get into it. Like, approach it as you'd any business with the risks and things like that, and use social media widely, because that will help you meet and know people that are doing that. Ask them questions, and yeah, they'll give you this kind of answers. And the other thing that I've found that has helped me, especially with marketing, is tracking production costs. Because sometimes you'll find all these people coming in with different prices. So at the end of the day, how do you determine the price for your product unless you have tracked how much you've produced? So you can do basic Excel sheets. Like, there's no template for that. It's like, calculate how much you put into seeds, how much you put into labor, how much you put into anything. It can be very discouraging, because when you're farming, sometimes you spend money daily. It may not be like huge amounts, so you might easily forget that. Put in your fuel costs there if you're traveling anywhere. Put in your food costs there in case you're feeding people. Put in your salary there, because even as a farmer, you need to pay yourself and that kind of thing. And then see, at the end of the day, before you sell, realize this is how much I've spent on my crop. This is the output I'm getting. So let's say you farmed your beans for 2.5 months and you spend like 58,000. So you harvest like, let's say 300 kg or something like that. You need to be able to divide that to give you the minimum price that you're going to ask per kg for the same. And then from there, add your margin. So that means at the end of the day, even if the market is bad, you can actually sell at cost and you will not have suffered a loss. But at the end of the day, that means with time, you can also adjust that so that you can make bigger margins. One of the ways that I found to make bigger margins is by reducing input costs for better margins. For one of the things that I've done, like I'll give you my experience with pig farming, feed costs have really been going up, especially because of Corona. So the border was closed, we can't get in maize through the border or sunflower, or production has really gone down because of the locust invasion, or just different reasons. So right now, it's really difficult to get feeds for the animals. So one of the things I learned was that I could actually get the ingredients myself from either farmers, from my farm, or from other people, and they'll be cheaper than the finished product, and I'll mix. So that has really saved us, and it's enabled us to keep stocking pigs, and other people are letting go of the stock, and it's made us keep them for longer, because the longer you keep them, the more weight they gain. And also it has helped us to, have a better product, because now we can monitor the value of the feeds going in and the quality of it and things like that. The other thing, can you hear me? Oh, sorry, I had someone intercept. Okay. We also use manure to reduce the cost of fertilizer, and then we also restructure stuff. Like, one of the things that happened when I moved here to the farm to commercialize it is I realized that the workers that my parents were using were costing us more than they were bringing in. So we had to fire some people, we had to restructure how we do our labor. At that point, we'd have the usual shamba boys that stay over. So we were like 2 that we housed, fed, and all those things. And when I looked at the value of the work they were doing, it was not beneficial compared to the casuals that will come in. So I switched fully to day workers that come in every day. And since then, we've actually had a better output of labor and established better relationship, and been able to train them to achieve even higher productivity. which at the end of the day, it's good for their pay too, because the more we produce, the better they get. And also it just reduce our cost while improving our quality. So these are all things that you must be there. You must really control your production line for you to be able to go to market. At the end of the day, that is what ensures that you get to market in the first place. So the first thing I would advise on is on production. The second thing I would like to talk about is sales, which is the most common thing you hear from most farmers and people that have tried it before, people that have interacted in the agriculture sector is middlemen, people that know a buyer and they know a farmer. So they come in between and sell to the buyer the highest price and get from the farmer at the lowest price, which you'd call a salesman really. And for you to get the best price, you at first you always start with middlemen because you have no idea of market. So I think almost every farmer has that experience of having to deal with middlemen. Sometimes you'll actually think you're selling to the final seller, but actually not. So you might think, oh, this is the usual price. So the number one way to avoid that is doing your own sales. What they are basically, you could call them, they're salesmen. They know someone who wants a product and another person who makes that product, and they bridge that gap. So that means if you're using middlemen, there's a gap within your production chain that you have to meet yourself. So what we've personally done as a firm is doing our own sales. We talk to everyone that is along that production line, or we will go to market. Like, let me give an example. When we're starting pig farming, at some point we got really banned because we used someone like that who had founded a slaughterhouse in Muranga, in Machakos. So first of all, we had to pay transport for our pigs to go get slaughtered. And by the time I got there, when I looked at the money that I received at the end of the day, I almost cried because I couldn't believe that is how much I had made on each of the pigs that I was selling. And it never made sense to me until I realized I could actually do the marketing myself. And I started walking around to local butcheries and things like that. And from that, we were able to get a contact. Like, my dad was actually able to talk to someone who sells pigs, and it was just from our usual conversation, from wherever you buy a pork from. And it happened that he was looking for a farm that can consistently supply him. And from there, we got a supply line that we use up to date. So you need to talk to these people early enough in your production. These are mama burgers, factories, supermarkets. There's a time, especially when you're doing greenhouse farming, that we're supplying supermarkets with our products. And sometimes you can think that this process is really complicated. All you need to go is walk around with your sample. Like, every time I'd be getting out of the farm to go to Nairobi, to go to Machakos town and things like that, I'll just carry samples and go to these places and be like, hey, I'm selling this and that. I grow them myself. Are you guys willing to take? In no time, you're directed the procurement officer and they're like, can you bring tomorrow? What quantity can you bring? It's never that complicated. It's not like you don't need to know anyone. You can just walk in to different places. Some places will turn you down. Some places will just tell you, hey, our owner actually farms these things. The hotels I've gone to, and the owner actually has a farm, so there's nothing you can supply. But the other hotels are like, oh my goodness, we've been looking for this product. And unless I did that, someone else would have done that and come and bought from me at a lower price. So doing your own sales is a very important thing. Like, posting on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter can give you customers and ideas that you never knew you could get. And it's do not be a desperate seller. That's one thing I've realized. So do not just post the day that you have the product. Post when you plant. Post when you go through, diseases. Post when you're producing, so that people get that buying value. Like, they feel like they farmed with you. So by the time you're saying, I'm harvesting my cabbages, I'm harvesting my skooma, people have seen these things from the time they were seeds, and they feel, connected to that, and it's easier to sell that product. But again, you have to be aware, because some of the people that will try to take from you on social media are also middlemen that are watching whatever you're doing and want to get on that product. So yeah, One of the other examples that I think we did with the vegetables, because now we grow a lot of vegetables, was that when COVID happened, Nairobi was closed off. So initially we were thinking we could sell there. So we're left with all these tomatoes and hohos and yellow and red pepper that we couldn't sell anywhere. So we decided to be going to our local markets here, because like when you move out of Nairobi, not every day is a market day. There are like 2 market days in a week. So there are at least 3 markets within 5 kilometers of where we live. So we went to one, and after our first day, all the mama mbogas are like, no, don't be selling here, be selling to us. So be coming at 6 a.m. to sell to us. And then from there, I picked the numbers, and just like that, I avoided transport cost and doing all these other things, because they would come and refer others, because word spreads around quickly, especially when there's a shortage. And especially, again, if you work on your production and you have a good product and it's all year round, they will keep saying, you know, these other farms, utapata, but on this specific one, you always get. So out of that experience, you usually tend to have off-takers all the time. And that also means we have to meet that demand. And because of that mode of marketing, like talking to your local market and talking to people that kind of take at the cheapest logistics possible, we always have more demand than we can supply. And that has been good for us. It's the same thing for fruits. We sell to the local school. Like that's one of the things that you can think of. If there's a school around you, they probably eat fruits. If they don't eat, the teachers eat. If there's a hospital around you, there are wards, and those wards will need food. So you could always talk to all those people and supply them. As long as you have people and institutions around you, then that means food is being consumed, and that is something you can supply. And it sometimes is as simple as a walk-in. The final factor I want to talk about is flexibility. And anyone who has farmed will tell you being flexible is a thing you really need to do, because farming will show you things. You will farm and it doesn't rain. I'll give you an example, like something I mentioned about when I tried doing watermelon the first time. I planted them today, tomorrow it rained heavily, and I woke up and all of them were swept away by the rain. So I had to think, what do I do? Do I give up? Do I do something else? Or there are factors outside my control. Like the thing I've just mentioned, COVID came, there were lockdowns, there were locusts. What happened with locusts was when they were being sprayed, they also killed bees. Bees are really important for pollination, which means production for oranges and things like that were really down last year because there are no bees to pollinate. So there are all these factors that will always be outside your control that you need to think of and be ready to adjust around and be flexible with that, which means you might need to get into another crop short term. I'll give you an example. A friend of mine was talking about online the other day, saying that when you're doing a long-term crop, let's say you're planting avocados, you're planting oranges, you're planting mangoes or something like that, that will take maybe 3 years till production. You can do beans in between because they'll sort of take the same amount of labor and give you short-term money. So that is a kind of flexibility you need to think about. If you're doing things for export, then there are some things that they will reject. So use those for your local market. And again, you will fail. That's for sure. With agriculture, it's growth. If you're dealing with nature, nature will always show you things. So you need to know when to quit and when to rebuild. Some things you will try and you just realize, no, that's not the way to go. Like there's a time I tried sweet potatoes and I was just like, no, that's not the way I want to go. There's a time I tried pumpkin, it didn't work. That's not the way to go. So there are crops you'll try, it doesn't work, and you quit. Like there's no shame in quitting something you don't like growing or you don't have the energy to keep doing. But there's also strength in rebuilding, in learning from that lesson and knowing, oh, this is what I can do next time that will work better. So all those things are things that will get you to market again, which is the same thing with pricing. Like there are times you'll be so excited that someone took your beans at 70 per kg, then you realize they were selling to someone a kilometer away from you at 100 per kg. Or I'll give you this example. This guy, he has a big cereals store. Is the biggest cereal store around me. And the issue that you'll have sometime is you can be attracted by all these people with big names, big quantities, and of taking all that. And at that time, I was in a cash flow program, so we gave them a lot of beans, and they had a promise like, "Oh, I'll pay you by Friday." I had to follow up that for almost 3 weeks because he came and peaked, and it's one of those situations when you think you can have a word of mouth agreement. So always learn from those things. Be flexible and learn that some people are out to con you, some people are out to, take advantage of you. So learn how to adapt. But the other thing is also know your limits. Don't flex forever. Like, have a limit, and that's why it's important to have a budget. Have a limit on how much you will do sales for, how much you'll produce for, and things like that, because you will overstretch yourself if you don't think through that. I have an example for that. Last year, Australian deliveries from the farm. So I would do deliveries every weekend. I would just fill the car boot and deliver to Nairobi. And the first few times it was profitable, but after a while, everyone was refining everyone else, which was a good thing. But I had not thought about fuel costs and traffic and things like that of moving around Nairobi. So by the time I go to the third week, I would end up with maybe 3-4 deliveries that I've not done on the day that I need. And then by the time you deliver them the following day, the product was not fresh, which means people didn't like it, which means you don't get good reviews, which means, again, it's come at a higher cost, both on your product and at the end. So I learned to plan better instead of getting excited about a new idea. And one of the ways you can apply that is an example. You can always run out of product. Like I gave an example with the chicken. And I learned that if I thought about it earlier, I could have aggregated with other farms because other people around me that are doing chicken. So instead of going through it alone, I could have really worked on my value chain of supplying to Nairobi. And I think that's the thing that I think I would like to encourage everyone who is on this. Agriculture is not just about farming. There are so many things along the value chain that could make you a lot of money. You can be someone that offtakes from farms. You can be someone that actually gets the farmers together and gets them better prices and they pay you. Like, find a way to aggregate produce around everyone and it will give you a better bargain for prices and get a cut from that. Be open to new ideas like sell seedlings, sell young animals. Like one of the lines that I'm now working on is selling pregnant pigs to people, like a pregnant source. That's what they call them. You'll find farmers that want to start a farm and they don't want to buy piglet. They'll rather buy, maybe 3 pregnant ones and get production from that, which is something I'd not thought about from the beginning. But when you're watching market and you're online and you see all these people that are asking for different products, you don't look at it and say, I don't do that. As long as it's within your value chain, try and see whether you can adjust to that. I'll give you an example of the person that got me into pig farming. I used to visit their farm all the time. And by that time, he was not doing his own. He was buying commercial feeds and supplementing them with other things. But after a while of supplying other farms with piglets and supplying them with mothers and things like that, farmers would come back and be like, when I looked at the age of the piglets that I took and the health versus what is on your farm and what is on my farm, the only difference I can see is the feeds. Can you tell me how you do your feeds, or maybe sell me your feeds? And out of that idea, now he runs a whole feeds business. Besides, he's still doing pigs, but now he's even had to open a shop and he imports like higher quantities as a mixer, as a portion mill, and that kind of thing. So sometimes just being open to new ideas and again supplying a good product will give you a new line of business that you never expected. And again, that happens at market level. So whatever your mama burger is asking you to do, whatever your butcher is asking you to do, whatever just cow people asking you to do might be able to boost your sales if you adjust accordingly or if you get into that line. But again, remember, do not overstretch your limits, because everyone you meet as a farmer will always have an idea of what you should be doing. They'll be like, hey, what about you do this? What if you do this? What if you do this? Not every idea is yours, so be willing to say no to some ideas. And yeah, that's it. That's it. I think in terms of being flexible, that's what I'd say. Aggregate, be open to new ideas, and look for new markets. And I think from everything I've said before, that might help you. And from examples, like you've seen how we've been able to look for new markets in different locations. And again, the number one thing at every stage of farming, and especially since today we're talking about marketing, is to make sure you reduce your logistics. So how can you get the cheapest input, which is still good quality, but sell at the highest price? That is by controlling your production and talking to everyone on that line. So buy from factory level if you need to, and sell direct to consumer if you can, or as nearest to the consumer as possible. So if you can't go to market, find someone who sells at market. If you can go to the factory, find a wholesaler who buys from factory. And that way you will get a lot of profit. And I guess that's all I had for today. I think I've run a bit of a time. As you heard, my name is Kavita. If you have any further questions, I know we're gonna have like a little bit of Q&A, but those are my contacts. And yeah, you can find me on social media at Kavita Ndolo or at Kitekani Farms on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and all that. Thank you. Because it's over to the host now for Q&As and that kind of thing.
President Ruth, are you with us?
Yes, it's still showing me a bit unstable. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Okay, so thank you, Kavita, for a wonderful presentations. You've actually made me start thinking about agriculture in a more serious manner. And anyone who has a question, kindly raise your hand or drop it in the chat box. In the meantime, maybe I can start with a question of my own. How do you decide which crop to start with? Does it depend on your area, especially considering how you can really plant different things in different places because of the improved technology? So how do you assess what to put on your farm? And then also I think we have this habit of, when someone says there's money in this fruit or vegetable, we tend to lean towards that. So how do we do it in a more informed manner?
The two ways to go about that. One thing is that the crop will decide for you. So the things you can't grow anywhere. So you'll have to look at, definitely if you have a specific piece of land, the crop will always tell you. So like, for instance, I'll give you an example. Purpose do not, they need well-drained soil. So there are places you'll come and just be like, whatever idea I had of doing here cannot work because either the land is too sloping or the soil is bad quality, or there's not enough water to do what I want to do, or there's excess water for what I want to do. So there are those factors that you cannot change about the crop, which you must always learn for yourself. And this includes also like sales. When you're talking about that thing for, oh, this crop has a lot of money, go and confirm it. Go to market, like go to your local market for 1 hour and see how much is selling. Talk to them about burgers. Let them tell you whether is this is production for this good enough through the year? Do you have people using it across the year? And that kind of thing. Like, do not get imaginary prices from people. Actually go and find out from other people. The second thing I'd say, it's all about you. It's all about what you want, what you prefer. A lot of things we grow because we want to grow them, which can also be a bad factor because you can get so stuck with something because you've always done it. So these are the two factors. It's yourself and the crop. Yourself, the amount of research you will do and that kind of thing, how much will come in because of influence, outside influence, because when people tell you this crop has this much money, they're not telling you how much money you're going to put into it. So it's up to you to decide how much research you're going to do into it. And one of the ways to research is like this. There are guys like Carlo in government, and the offices has the best data on every single crop you can grow in this country. We'll have all the data on different breeds and stuff like that. And all the information is free. They even have an app, they have a website, they have offices you can walk into. Sometimes if you're lucky enough, they might give you free seeds and things like that. So research is available. Do not just base it on popular opinion. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Kavita. We have quite a few hands up and one question on the chat. So we'll start with, are you comfortable with taking 3 at a time?
Yes.
Okay, so I hope you have somewhere to note the questions. So we'll start with Samantha, then we'll have Eva and Gideon. After that, I think there's a question from Steve in the chat, and then we'll have Joseph. Samantha can go first.
Thank you, Madam President. Part of my question was answered with your question, though I was also curious to know from the fruits he farms, why he chose oranges and pawpaws, and what is their maintenance procedure from beginning to end. Thank you.
Thank you, Samantha. Kavita, you've noted that down?
Yeah.
Okay, Eva, can go next.
Okay, thank you, Madam President. Good evening, everyone. I have 2 questions. I don't know if we can do that, Madam President, but two questions. The first question, Kavita, you spoke about taking your produce from the market on market days. Do you mind telling us which markets these are? Because I do farming, and we've tried going to markets in Nairobi and some in Kiambu, and our experience was horrible. Like, there was no going in. We did not have an easy time actually selling our produce in the market. So since you have a better experience, maybe you can tell us which markets specifically you went to. Maybe we can try those markets. Question number 2, is there any way that having had experience in farming for a long time, ours is not much, we are just coming to a year, but we've noticed the farm inputs, the chemicals, the fertilizers, they seem to, today they are fine, tomorrow they are ridiculous. So is there a way, like in experience, have you learned how to predict the farm input prices? Like, like maybe, for example, in January, they are lower, in December, they're higher, something like that. Do you have any advice on how to be able to predict that, so that someone can plan accordingly? Thank you.
Thank you, Eva. Then we'll have the last question for this round from Rotarian Gideon.
I noticed in your mix, you didn't talk of dairy animals. But yes, I like your mix in terms of vegetables and animal, particularly pigs and chicken. I'm also interested in dairy, and I'm a COVID-turned farmer. So yes, markets it would be of interest. Costing, of course, we didn't cost initially, so we tend to go with market prices. Like Sukuma wiki, we've sold from 800 shillings to the next time the guys came to the farm, they offered 1,500. The next time they came, they offered 1,000. And basically, if you ask other traders, you realize prices fluctuate at that rate. Probably you can guide us on how you do it so that you can plan in terms of budgeting and the outcomes you want in terms of profits. Thank you.
Thank you, Ote and Gideon. Kavita, maybe you can answer those four, and then we can move to the next round of questions.
I think the first question was on why oranges and purples. I never chose the orange line. I was born into it. Okay, for real though. Like the oranges we have are like over 10 years old. So when my family liked that and they grew them. So how we got into oranges was just out of preference. And oranges can produce twice a year or once a year, depending on the conditions that they're put in. Ours tend to produce twice a year because of season production. And usually they don't have a lot of work. You plant them, you harvest from the third year onwards. And from the time you're harvesting, they'll be giving you like 100 fruits per tree. And at premium production, it's about 300 fruits per tree at different seasons. So there's a season in May and there's a season in November. And that's that. Like in most cases, you'll always have people that will come pick at the farm, which is like, burgers from the market, or someone you've actually contracted to do that. It's easy to find a market because you have the whole year to look for the market. And then in many, many, many cases, they'll have people that just walk into the farm looking for different prices. Purpose, what got me into purpose was from, again, getting interested and staying curious. We've always had purpose on a small scale here at the farm, just for own consumption. But after visiting a couple of farms and seeing what they do, and especially seeing them, how they sell, like for purpose, once you plant them from the 9th month, you're going to market, and each tree is giving you 2 purpose a week for about 3 years. Like peak production is up to the 3rd year. After the 3rd year, the production is not good enough for you to keep the tree. So I like purpose because of the cash flow. All the others were giving me money twice a year, but I was looking for something I can sell weekly. And that's how I got into purpose. And also because the initial cost of growing them is not that high. You can get seeds and plant them, or you can get seedlings. And yeah, so the management is not that crazy. So it's something that I want to get into for that reason. I want to get into it because of the cash flow, so that I'll have something I'm selling weekly. So that's the reason I chose purples and oranges. The process is much more complicated than that, or not complicated, like more complex than that. Like there are more steps involved. Like there's a land preparation, there's manuring, there's pruning, there's spraying for different pests and maintenance and things like that. But I find fruit farming simpler compared to the rest. Someone asked about markets. That depends a lot on the county that you go to. Some counties allow anyone to come in on market days. Then when you get nearer to Nairobi and you go to markets on the outskirts of Nairobi, so what you do, and you're in Kiambu or Nairobi, there are all these cartels, always people that have designated spots. But in Machakos, unless like the only place that I know that you find a hard time finding spaces, maybe the towns that are nearer to Nairobi, like Athi River and Machakos itself. But these other satellite smaller towns, like the markets are sold at Kaviani, Kawede, and Itaboni, where on market days, anyone can actually get a spot to sell at. And I know you asked that because sometimes I see lorries from Kiambu that come all this way. They will park, they will pay council fees, which is like 200 for a parking spot, and offload and sell cabbages all day, then go back to Kinango. So we always have people that are coming from really far to sell different things. So if that works out for your transport cost, you can still do it. But I've found that local market depends a lot on where you're located at. Someone asked about fertilizers and the way they fluctuate, and the inputs really, fertilizers and seeds and the way they fluctuate over seasons. Like for instance, in September and October, fertilizer prices almost go up 50%. The reason is because aggregates realize everyone is going to sell. The factories are not selling them at higher cost. It's just a demand supply kind of mechanism. So one of the things that you do is buying fertilizers of season. Like if you're planning to plant in the March rains, buy in December. Because in December, no one is buying for planting. Everyone is buying the fertilizers for foliar, for spraying, for harvesting, that kind of thing. So always buy them off season. And I think this is something that you learn on the job as you go. And a good way to also do that is all these companies have representatives. So if you can go out on their websites and find out their numbers, you can ask them for their regional representative and that kind of thing. And they will advise you on price changes. They'll only tell you this, like if you contact them personally and things like that. So that's the other thing that you have to be keen on, finding contacts that you can always use so that you can monitor different things, or having good friends of the aggregate. Like if you use the same aggregate throughout, you can always be sure of the quality of what you get. And also with time, you can note the changes in their prices. So again, relationships will be key to your success in your enterprise and how you go about them. Because I think one of the sad things is that, especially when it comes to vegetables and, crops that are not considered cash crops by government, there's no framework for how different inputs come. For bigger things like, tea and coffee, they always have almost fixed prices for everything and different suppliers for everything. But for us guys, you have to look out for yourself. So do your due diligence with that. Someone asked about dairy farming. I don't have dairy farming. It's too crazy for me. So we chose not to do that, but I have people around me that do that. You ask about prices and that thing for fluctuation of prices. Prices will always fluctuate. What you set is your minimum that you can take. The minimum that you know that if I sell at this price, I have not made a loss. So I've not sold to you at a loss. Of course, you do not check the first crop. Let's say you're doing skooma, you look at your inputs up to the point that you sell, then realize if I sell for 2-3 weeks, I'll have recovered the costs that I input, then the rest will be profit. And of course, depending on market, that's how the prices will come and you can negotiate for better. So if you find out that your costs were up to 600, anyone offering you 601 is doing you a favor. But of course, you'll try to get that 1,000, 1,200 kind of thing. But yeah, the other thing I always advise people is have production throughout the year so that you can get the best prices and the lowest prices, and then they will equalize. Like for instance, tomato prices are usually highest around January, February, and March, because for some reason, people don't farm in November and December. So the people harvesting in January, March, up to March, will have the best prices for tomatoes. Then there's a flood in the market because everyone is told, hey, nyanya is going to be kubwa. And then all of a sudden, prices drop in May, June, July, because everyone has decided to farm tomatoes and onions, because apparently at that point, they're expensive. Someone farming throughout the year will get the highest prices and the lowest prices and the medium prices. And then they'll be able to have an average price kind of thing. And actually, when people are getting lower prices, we found throughout the year, you'll have kept your customer. What happens when you keep your customer? You will not charge them a premium when everything is so high, but neither will they agree to buy at very low prices when everyone is discarding the product. So that's the other thing. You tend to get average prices if you farm throughout the year. So one of the ways to avoid price fluctuations is having a consistent market by having consistent production. And also keeping your ears towards, like, I've noticed a very simple thing I do is I have these 3 markets I talked about, Kawedika, Vigani, and Mitaboni, which are all within 5 kilometers of where I farm, but they will have different prices for different commodities. So I always check which market doesn't have what I'm growing. So if one market is buying a bucket of tomatoes of 600, you might find the other one is buying at 1,000 because no one has farmed in that area. So always stay on the lookout for different prices. But sometimes you can't control those factors. So what you can control is your production cost, your price, and producing throughout the year, just to make sure you catch both waves of up and down. I think I've answered those questions. I'll take the question on the chat, which was on which platforms, by Steve, by the platforms which allow us to export our produce and how you can source from markets overseas, especially fruits and vegetables. I have not been involved in export. I've had a few people actually make inquiries for doing that. In most cases, the work that it takes to source for markets overseas is done by people that are not farmers, people that will work out the logistics of export, the logistics of transport, the logistics of markets there and things like that. So you'll usually be contracted by an exporter to do that, which is something I'm actually in the process of working on for vegetables, but I've not done it directly. So I would not have the answers for that. There was a question on the issue on animal feeds. Animal feeds, I said, it's make your own feeds. Make your own feeds. Whether it's for poultry, whether it's for dairy, whether it's for pigs, like lamb, like all those things. Some of these things, especially like most animal feeds, the biggest ingredient is maize. So find ways to buy maize when it is at the lowest price and keep it. Like a corporation meal, mix yourselves and find the other ingredients. So that's one of the things, like just doing basic agronomy, which is you study the contents of the feeds that you have and seeing whether it will work for you. Yeah, so that's sort of advice on animal farming. But yeah, you can contact me for those. He asked for reference, so you can contact me for references for different things I've used.
Thank you, Kavita. We also have a hand up from Josek.
Yeah, thank you, Ruth. That was a great presentation. So my question is on when you're a small or medium scale production farmer, how are you able to get better bargaining power, prices in the market, especially considering that when you're a small or medium scale production farmer, you have to sell to other wholesalers and they will really give you aggressive prices that just minimize your profit. So that's one. Part B of it is what are some of the strategies that you can use still as a small or medium scale production farmer to sell directly to the end consumer, or if it's a company that does production with your produce, are you able to bridge that gap, hence cutting off the price difference, working with middlemen or other wholesalers who will supply to the end user?
I think I've talked about that a couple of times already. It's do the work of the middleman, do the work of the wholesaler. The fact that they're buying from you means there's market for it. And the fact that they're coming to buy from you, that means there's a price advantage you want to take care of, and they're doing the work for that. Like, as much as we don't like these guys, they're actually putting in the work to get those prices. So it's almost like you assume you don't find the product and you want to sell it to someone. So you walk to hotels, you walk to different mama mbogas, find out the numbers, because someone will buy from you, go to sell to the mama mboga who will sell to the end consumer. Find out about that. If you are growing animals, instead of selling them to someone who will take to the slaughterhouse, go to the slaughterhouse and find their contacts and ask, can I bring my animals here to be slaughtered for sale? You'll have reduced, like, try to reduce the number of people between you and your end consumer as much as possible. And that is groundwork. It's like tamaking. It's like looking for a job. You just have to reduce the number of people between you and the consumer at the end of the day. That is the only way you'll improve your price. Sometimes the difference will be like 10 shillings, when you look at that over 1,000 items, it's a lot of savings every time you sell. And yeah, I think it involves you doing work that you're not familiar with. Personally, I don't like sales, but I've had to do things like that. I've had to do things like that where you do your due diligence and try to find a way to sell to your end consumer. Another way is trying to do direct deliveries. So one thing I realize is that your friends will buy once and not come back. So trying to get people that you've been referred to that actually consume this product. They're not buying to promote, they are buying to use. If you base your business on, I'm going to promote you, they will buy once, you'll think you have a good market, then they'll disappear. So looking for that person that actually consumes, walk to hotels, find vibandas that are like, we sell chips. So you ask them, how much do you buy your potatoes for? If you're growing your potatoes and you're able to find someone that supplies vibandas, that's much better than buying from the person that buys from you at the farm, then supplies the person that supplies the vibandas. So try as much as possible to just cut off those people within that process. That's what I think. That's what has worked for me.
Okay, thank you, Kavita. I believe everyone's questions have been answered. No further questions have been raised on the chat, and there are no other hands up. I'd request you to kindly stop sharing your screen so that we are able. Thank you. I'll now invite. Thank you. Also, I've seen you've shared your presentation on the chat. So guys, download the presentation and take note of the contacts of Kavita and Kidekani Farms. And yes, reach out for more information. We like to see our members and guests thriving in economy. So yes, now I'll invite Vivian Lispa to give the vote of thanks to our speaker for today.
Thank you, Madam President. You've been an amazing host. You always have been. Okay, let me start by thanking our speaker for today, Mr. Kavita Ndolo. Thank you for a very informative session. You've really jogged our minds. Personally, I'm really blown. Sometimes when we look at our parents, our grandparents, I think all of us, especially being Kenyan, those of us who are Kenyan, we know someone who farms. But I don't think there are so many people who are that business minded as you are. Like, I think most people just basically farm maize, beans, just the basic food crops that everyone does. And the fact that you've done such an amazing job with the family land, that's amazing. What I've taken from your presentation is that agribusiness is like any other business. So treat it with that seriousness, plan properly, do your research, have good management, don't use the middlemen, you'll make losses. That was amazing. I also love the fact that you're not paying for electricity, you're using solar panels. You've done your own boreholes and your own dams. That way you don't get to pay water bills, you don't get to buy water. That is amazing. So that is a lot of cost saving. So I believe all of us have learned so much from that, and maybe we'll get more farmers from this presentation. Yeah, I also want to thank the Professional Development Committee for planning this amazing talk. You guys, anyway, you always do great. The speakers for RCMC are always just amazing. So thank you to the team. Kudos for that. President Ruth and VP James, thank you for hosting. Thank you for always keeping us on time. Thank you for always starting the meeting on time, for being patient with people as they join in. And those people who come in late, they should start getting fined. Lakini wacha nisichome. President, Rotary Club of Nairobi, thank you for making time to be with us, President Gideon. But well, you're equally a farmer, so we also wish the best for you, and we hope one of these fine days we'll also get to hear from you about the farming. Any other Rotarian in the house? I'm not sure. To Rotaractors and the guests present, thank you also for joining in. Let's all have a restful evening. That's all from me.
Thank you, Vivian. That was wonderful. Yes, we have other Rotarians. Rotarian Eva is with us. She's also part of the Rotary Club of Nairobi. James, if you can resume sharing your screen.